I want to follow up on comments that you made earlier this year, which was something I was pleased to see, where you indicated that any corruption would be a centerpiece of President Biden's foreign policy agenda. And you've already answered some of that with Senator Menendez in regards to how you're using the DRG Center. You specifically mentioned in those comments the use of the tools that are at your disposal, including Magnitsky sanctions. Can I take it that you will work with us as we look at permanently authorizing the global Magnitsky statute? Today it's by executive order and by statute that expires. We take pretty much what was in the executive order, Senator Wicker and I, and codify that as permanent authorization. Do we have your support on that legislation?
Unequivocally, and let me just thank you for the Magnitsky Act, where your leadership was so pivotal. As you know, it has now been replicated to a large extent in Europe and in Canada. I think one of our tasks is to ensure that other countries adopt similar measures so that we can multilateralize these corruption and human rights sanctions.
And Senator Young and I have introduced legislation to try to build on it to give capacity for our missions to evaluate how well the countries in which they operate are dealing with corruption. So it's a way of using a standard similar to what we do in trafficking in persons to monitor progress made in fighting corruption. You mentioned in your article anti-bribery statutes and dealing with the laundering, anti-laundering statutes, et cetera. Will you work with us as we look to enact this law to give you additional tools to help fight corruption?
Yes, Senator, always looking for additional tools. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So let me talk a little bit about Central America. You already talked a little bit about that with Senator Menendez, and I know that President Biden is looking at providing help to the Central American countries in order to do what's right in our hemisphere from a humanitarian point of view, as well as the practical aspects of migration. But there is systemic corruption in these countries that if we don't deal with it, we are going to be giving money that will not get to its intended purpose. So how do you intend to make sure that our assistance to the Central American countries are used for the people to deal with the problems of Central America and not just fuel corruption?
Thank you, Senator. You put your finger on a real inhibitor of progress, above all progress for the people of that region. Let me say that from what I understand of USAID programming up to this point, there is, of course, a recognition of the barrier that corruption has constituted to economic progress, to progress in combating threats to physical security. And thus, much of the programming is routed, for example, through local officials who have been identified as reformers or civil society partners. And indeed, many of those partners, as you know, are doing work to hold the central authorities accountable for transgressions and for different forms of corruption. It's been disappointing to see some of the strides that were made, for example, in Guatemala and Honduras through CICIG. CICIG was actually the most popular, and I know you were critical in pushing for its mandates to be renewed successively in Guatemala. It was the most popular institution in Guatemala before it was shut down. And so that is disappointing because it had a really important role to play. Then Vice President Biden was also critical in ensuring that it was preserved there. But I think thinking through at the central level what more we can do for civil society actors that are holding government accountable to try to change the equation so that those governments that are trending in worrying directions reverse that tide.
I know that we can help you in this regard. I strongly support our involvement in Central America. But when we put conditionality on aid, it gives the administration, I think, the additional strength in dealing with the governments to indicate there's got to be progress made in dealing with the governance issues. So I hope you take that as friendly help when we look at conditionality to make sure that we do achieve progress in dealing with systemic problems in these countries. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back my time.
Thank you.